So thank you everyone for joining us for this second anniversary of our Replacement Child Forum anniversary. And we felt like this was an important discussion to have about relationships, because we know that that is a central issue that does affect replacement children. So we wanted to just welcome you all. We're going to be going into breakout sessions and talking a little more in depth in an anonymous way. Not recorded, but we'll come back after that and we'll report on what we've discussed in our groups. So thanks so much, and let's get going.
Yeah, I wanted to get us started a bit of thinking on relationships, because the replacement child condition has so many aspects to it, as you have who've delved into the forum seen what we've covered already. But relationships are a real central issue, and we will focus only on relationships today. And to each one of us, maybe a special part of that big topic by itself is of importance. And my take on it is developmental, that it basically starts with the primary relationship we have with our mother or our father or our caretaker. And that relationship can be fraught by loss, by grieving, right from the beginning, basically from in utero or from birth on, because there's an overshadowing aspect. There's a ghostly presence or a grieving, depressed mom or father or grandparent. And that colors our experience of relationships. It may abrogate our trust. It may make our attachment style avoidant or ambivalent or rejecting or a little bit unstable, because that very beginning, then we will repeat that pattern in our relationships. So I just wanted to say that that's something we want to be aware of, because if we know that, we can then check a little bit of our reactions and maybe change the way we relate with ourselves and with others. That was just my take on it. I don't know whether you would like to add to this, Judy or Rita or Sarah.
Well, I guess my question is, you know, before we get into our breakouts, I was thinking maybe the four of us, the co-founders, our board member who was here, we might want to just kind of start the ball rolling by saying what it's meant to us in our lives. You know, I can tell you that relationships through my life have been difficult. I think I've finally figured it out, but it took me a long time. You know, mine was really, the crux of it was my relationship with my father, which is, I know, different than, you know, others, because my parents lost a child who was, you know, 2 at the time. And, you know, I was, as replacement children, you know, I was born to replace that child. And the feeling that I always got was that I was not ever going to be able to replace that child. So there's that feeling of inadequacy. We have more people joining us. Robbie. Hi, Robbie.
Hi, Judy. I love your hair.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh my God, you look so glamorous.
Yay.
Hi,
Oh, natural.
I'm sorry for the delay. I was finishing a radio interview and I just couldn't click on. So anyway,
we just did some introductions. So would you just tell everybody who you are and where you are?
Where you are?
Yeah. So Robbie Ludwig, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. I'm in New York City. I'm an author, psychotherapist, and have worked with Rita and the gang on some of the aspects of the replacement children website, and just fascinated by this kind of new discussion that people are having about this phenomenon, and just happy to hear from everyone and their thoughts and what they're doing.
And a valued partner with us.
Yeah, valued.
Thank you.
Valued
Thank
partner.
you.
Thank you so
Robbie.
much for everything you've contributed to it. the awareness of especially. So
Well,
thank you. I'm glad you could join us today.
Thank you. I've told Rita, I think this is the next big discussion,
Yeah.
that will be very familiar to us culturally. I think it's just a matter of time and getting there, but I really think that this is a really important conversation to have and will help people understand themselves and others from a new viewpoint that's really invaluable.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for
Thanks,
that.
Robbie.
We were just going to start the ball rolling before we're going to go into breakout sessions in just a bit, but we were just starting with like our personal our co-founders, our Sarah, our board member. We were just going to talk about just the direction that we're going in here. And I was talking about my situation. My father was really, I was always trying to replace my father, and the value that a father brings, and the love, and so I found partners that were like him and recreated kind of the distance that I felt with him, which of course did not work out very well. So these are the things that I think, help us talk about it the way that I think the way I figured it out, and it wasn't through therapy, I have to say, because none of the therapists I went to had any idea what I was talking about and never asked about my past, never asked about this. So I think it was trial and error and just looking at myself in miserable situations and trying to find the reasons, and actually writing my book was really the way that I put the pieces together. So that's kind of my story. And Kristina, would you like to just interject your your situation, your story?
Okay, my personal story is born 6 months after my 2-year-old brother dies from appendicitis. And I think my mother, of course, was pregnant with me 3 months when she had to bury her son. So I was born into grief. Our house was built in front of the cemetery. This was an ever-present element in my upbringing, the absence of my brother. And some replacement children are upset because the missing sibling is idealized, and they don't have enough of a space. I was on another spectrum. I was missing my brother. I wanted to have at least Hansel when I was Hansel and Gretel in this situation, and I was alone. And because I was alone, I think I was looking both for a replacement to my brother in a lover, in a friend. And I was looking for a mother because I never bonded with my mother. I was a father's daughter. I had a good relationship with my father, but with my mother, she never got over the grief of her son. So I figured out, I became adult, I think, when I went into analysis and into training, and I figured out I was doing onto partners what had been done onto me. I was replacing, and that this, of course, wasn't gonna work. And becoming aware was a major, major, major shift in the way I could live my relationships with women and with men, because I had to repair that, what we call a negative mother complex. Just maybe handing it on to Rita and
Rita, yes.
Hi, everyone. My story is that I was born 18 months after my 14-year-old brother died from a heart defect. And my mother never got over it, and really I became very critical. I wasn't the girl she wanted, and I certainly wasn't able to replace the boy. So she was very depressed. And what's very interesting is she was very critical. She would talk about me to other people like I was this, perfect girl, but would describe somebody I never met, never existed, but would be very critical. And becoming aware of the whole replacement child condition really made me understand and have sympathy for my mother. The way it affected my relationships was, I think as a very young girl, I became a people pleaser just not to be criticized. And, just had to find my way of who I was and break out of who I was. And the other thing that helped so much is when I realized that I wasn't alone in the boat. This made a huge difference, that other people also were replacement children, which we had never heard the word before, and had stories that, like, the underlying felt so similar. It felt like it was like, this is what's so wonderful about all of us. It's like a community that can understand something underlying that nobody else has had to face, or so that was very helpful. So when I realized what it was and could really have a name for it and understand how to work through it, I feel like I was able to kind of come into my own even more. So that was my story. Sarah?
Thank you. Yes. Hi, everyone. So for me, I mean, there's definitely some similarities with what everyone else shared, but I was born after the death of a 6-year-old sister. And my sister, especially by my mom, was very much idealized. And to this day, my mom will say that my sister was a perfect child and a perfect human. That's the word she used, perfect. And she still uses that word, that my sister was perfect. So I did grow up with this perfect sibling. And, later on, I did kind of question. When I was little, I didn't question. I remember later kind of questioning. My mom would say things like, oh, my sister would help her, when she'd bring home the groceries, and would put all the groceries away. And then later, as an adult, I kind of thought, she was 6. Did that really happen? But, obviously when you're little, you buy into these things. But anyway, she was perfect. And I heard that throughout my life. And when I look at my relationships, what's interesting is my first, kind of bigger romantic relationship, like the big boyfriend in high school that I was with for several years. It's interesting, the person that I chose, because he was somebody who, had ways that he was very critical. And so I think I was reenacting this thing in which I felt like I was never good enough for my mom, who had this perfect kid. And then I was kind of never good enough for this boyfriend. But yet I think I was enacting it on some level, trying to master that, right? Like I was hoping, well, maybe in this scenario, I can do all these things right. And then he will embrace me fully, and I will be good enough for him. And, so I think I played out all these things in this high school kind of romance that I had for a few years. Mm-hmm. But later I did become kind of more aware of, for different reasons, became more aware. Eventually went to school, to grad school, became a therapist, did a lot of my own therapy. But even before that, I was really striving to kind of understand more about what this experience meant in my life. So now I've gravitated towards kind of much healthier. Really, I have a very stable marriage now, and somebody who's very stable and reliable. And I think that also was something that was important for me later in my life, to have somebody that was really, I could depend on in that way.
Great.
Thank you. And I think we're ready to break out into our groups.
Too. Yeah, I think that would be, we can deepen our discussion, because in the groups, of course, we will not record.
Right.
And thank you for agreeing to the recording for the larger community also, because we can share this with them to encourage them. So what I will do is I will make us, it's automatically assigned, go into groups for 20 minutes. So that means until the full hour, we can discuss there. And I will try to assign each one of us 4 to the 4 groups. So one person of us will be with you. And we suggest that then somebody reports back from each working group what was the main question or what was the main finding with regard to relationships from the group discussion. But we do that in an anonymous way. So we will not refer to a person. We will say these issues were raised or these questions we would like to have addressed. So when we come back from the working groups, we have another, I think, half an hour to discuss this. It's great to see you all back. It's wonderful. One person from our group had to leave us. So we might be 1 minute. but I think we are all here.
One person from our group had to leave as well.
Okay. Can you all close your microphone?
Or mute.
Mute, yes, mute.
There we go.
Thank you, thank you.
Christina, I'm wondering if I can go first, since I need to kind of quickly
Yes.
segue out, and I want to honor the incredible people that were in my breakout group.
Go ahead.
First of all, was there anything in particular that you wanted to hear?
No, it's whatever were the relationship issues raised in your group.
Yes, we did have relationship issues, and I think we saw a wide array of what the replacement child can look like and feel like. And, you know, that they were not, the circumstances were very, very different, but yet the feeling is the same. And I also, in my group, discovered that, you know, a replacement child can also have survivor guilt, and how that can play a role in how they experience themselves and relate to the world, and perhaps even the professions that they choose. But, you know, that, you know, these people identify as replacement children are kind of born with a job they never asked for. And it really takes a while and maturity to find themselves, or find a way out of that, if it's even possible, or a way to reincorporate maybe this original unasked for job into the rest of their lives. And, you know, one of the psychological goals is to discover and identify the self, and to honor the self. And hopefully that becomes the lifelong mission.
Yes.
I hope for the people in my group I did that justice. If I was off in any description, please weigh in. But really, really just powerful stories, and all distinctly unique, is I think what's interesting about the replacement child story. There's a similar thread, but the stories and situations are very different, or unique, can be uniquely different from one another.
So true, so true. Thank you, Robbie. If anybody wants to add from the group, feel free. Otherwise, we go to the next group. And
I think that was wonderful. A great description. You're born with a job that you didn't ask for, and you really didn't have on the job training, so it's not easy.
Yeah.
And the lifelong
And
job.
so there's emotional burnout too.
Yeah.
You know, there's like this, right? I mean, it's like you're not given a retirement package. It's like there's this incredible burnout and pressure and guilt that's just kind of layered on top of you at birth. And really the goal is, how do you figure out through this emotional maze how to rediscover who you are and put things in its proper place so that you can live a life of freedom.
And basically you're pointing, in terms of relationship issues, you're pointing to the primary relationship with yourself.
Yes.
That's the starting point from where everything else will hopefully build into place again.
And maybe to find a way to honor that idea without eliminating it. So to honor the fact that these are the circumstances and this was your job, and not that you have to cut it out like a cancer, but that find a way to incorporate that into your identity so it doesn't put who you are at risk or compromise who you really are.
Yeah. Reconstruct.
Yes, thank you.
Well put. Well put.
Okay, next group. Who wants to speak of the next working group?
I can speak for, I was elected to speak for my group, so I'm happy to share for them. So I just want to say there were a lot of very kind of intimate stories that were shared that I won't share here, but just some really nice sharing that happened in the group about again, like we were saying, some very different and unique experiences, but then some kind of common themes that we all came to. And just to begin, one person was talking about how important this group is for not feeling alone with this, but to be able to be here and connect with others, and how meaningful this is. But one thing that was brought up was kind of how, and I know many of us have talked about this in different ways, but just how our experiences of being born into this role are often reenacted in our relationships. The person phrased it as kind of feeling like they were always the second in relationships, not the primary. So that really their experience of being born as a replacement child was then reenacted over and over again in their life relationships. So we talked about that. So that seemed like a really important theme that came up. Another thing that came up that I thought was interesting that I think many of us related to was a certain kind of sensitivity and sensibility. And even in terms of who we are drawn to as partners, what they might have going on, and how often we are in this role of just being very kind of attuned and sensitive to others, sometimes caretaking for others in our relationships, but just how, again, we're talking about that like unpaid job that we didn't ask for, but how we really were trained from kind of the second we were born to be very sensitive. We were born, many of us, to grieving parents. And so that from day one, we were kind of trained to be caretaking. And so then it's not surprising that we end up in these relationships where sometimes we're caretaking for a partner, or exceptionally sensitive to a partner, or to friends or other people that we are in relationships with. And then finally, some of the other things we talked about, I guess on another note, which I think is also really, really important to talk about, is we talked about some of the relationships that we've had, growing up when we were little that, were maybe not the best because of our experiences as being born as replacement children, but also the relationships that maybe came in and helped support us, right? So on the other side, the other angle, to think about whoever those people were, be it the other parent, be it another sibling, be it whoever it might be, who maybe came and took on a little extra to help us when we were little, when we were growing up, even in our adult life, right? But how some of us, fortunately, maybe we lacked certain things in some relationships in our childhoods, but maybe there were other people, and some examples were given in the group of kind of other people who came in really, really important ways to nurture certain qualities, to encourage, to support, to kind of be that person for us. So a lot of thankfulness for that, that helped, I think, a lot of people be more resilient in their lives and get to where they are now. So those were a few things that I thought were really important that we talked about. And I don't know if anyone from my group wants to add anything. I hope I did everyone's words justice.
I would like to add something. I think how it was so visible how much the attachment style is affected by, like, when you replace another child, you have a mourning mother. She is absent. She's sort of dead, as you said, Kristina, before. And how this influences later the relationship to a partner, and how hard this is for the partner to carry. So, well, that's my story. So looking at the partner who was a replacement child, and to be with him, and to realize that there was something in the very, very beginning of the attachment which didn't work.
So you were put in the position.
I was put in the position of being the wife of such a man.
Exactly. And then you were in the position of being absent, because that's what the man carried himself.
Yes.
Because he was a replacement.
At the end, I ended up being absent because I left him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and one might even get the projection of not being good enough, or oneself thinks
sure.
that others are not good enough, etc.
Yeah.
Yes, has very big repercussions. Oh,
Now, could that be leaving somebody before they left you again?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's another thing. But in this case, I was leaving because I couldn't bear this constant being not good enough, not being really in relationship with me. There was a big gap between us.
And it even has repercussions for the following generations.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, thank
Just,
you.
I'm just going to say thank you for including me all. And
Bobby, thanks for joining us.
I so appreciate you, me, and hearing your stories. And I want to say a special thank you to my breakout group who just thank you for sharing your powerful stories. They will truly live with me. I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you,
for now.
Robbie.
Enjoy
You're
the rest of-
invaluable. Thank you.
Bye, Robbie.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you.
The next working group, there are 2 more groups to report. Who would like to go? Yes, Lisette?
Yeah, we had basically it governed our life choices. What happened with, they were all very different but all very similar. And one thing that we did notice, or that really stood out, is our ages and when we actually found out about being a replacement child and how that impacted how we changed with that information. And noticing that because we had lived this life for quite a while, that change became difficult to implement. So that, like, that default setting of what our script was the hardest thing to change. So challenging that created its own issues with relationships with either friends, partners, family. And there was one thing that came up was also it didn't get picked up in counselling. So that wasn't taken seriously, which again was another theme with generally how we all felt, that we weren't taken seriously with what. So in relationships, we would feel that what we had to say to other people wasn't important. And that obviously then has a big impact, that you're not really, it doesn't really matter. I think that was some of it. And then the other thing was that the one thing was there was very conflicting sides. That came up at one point where there was one part that felt very weak and there was another part that felt very strong. That was one comment that came up, and it was in that search to try and find who we really are. We're kind of always exploring with our friends and our partners, and depending on who we've chosen, which it's almost like we've chosen them to work out or play out some of these issues. And I think it depends on who they are, as whether we can, or whether they, it's how strong do we feel to make that challenge, even once we know that maybe some of these relationships aren't good for us. It's knowing whether we can still be our true self, to eliminate that relationship or to go there, even to test that water.
The repetitions in later relationships. Yes. Yeah. Other members in the group want to contribute to these findings? Thank you, Lisette.
Well, I was in our little group, and I think you reflected our conversation really well. I mean, the part where we want to be our authentic selves, I think, came through, and it always amazes me when we have these discussions how the themes keep recurring in all of us. And I every time I hear it, it's overwhelming that we have so many of the same things going on in our lives, or happening, and that feeling of being valued is a very consistent theme. Are we important? Are we what we say? Is it an important thing? Is it and even sometimes when you have the awareness, it's still difficult.
Yeah,
it's still difficult. So,
but the forum gives that validation, doesn't it? It just, I think that really does support what you're doing.
that's our biggest, I think, our biggest mission. So,
Yes, I think so.
thank you.
Sure. It's excellent. Excellent.
So we have one more, right?
Brit,
Yeah.
I think. Yes.
I think you guys already covered most of it. I just had like, I put down a few words just for myself, that it's still such a taboo to talk about these issues. May it be your therapist, may it be even your parents, especially difficult to talk with the people about it that are actually involved in the whole issue. That there's a lot of trauma carried on to the next generation. And what I found quite fascinating was the twin story that came up in our group, where somebody said that her sibling kind of felt like her twin to her, and that she had like this imaginative person in her head. And yeah, I can totally relate to that, because whenever I only knew with 16 that there was a sibling before me, and I always felt like, oh great, there's a big sister that I was always looking for, even if she was not alive anymore. But it kind of like filled a gap whenever I knew it, that always been there already. So like the sensitivity to actually as a child already get what's wrong, even if you cannot phrase it, was quite astonishing to me.
Yeah, I was in your group with Brit and one member who had to leave earlier, and Rita was there. Thank you, Brit, for sharing this. I wished we had another hour to be in that group, number one. I felt it was too short. And number two, I think there was also raised the issue of how we want to heal our parent. That relationship with the parent from the beginning affects us, and how negative emotions were like not permitted by the grieving parent. And that was something we had to work through to be able to become ourselves, to in a sense separate from the parent, not wishing to salvage the parent, go our way, and then maybe after we've gone our way, maybe we can do something for our parent after all.
You know, Kristina, could I say something that struck me also? In our parents' generation, and you know, all of us are like at a certain age, there was no counseling at all. There was nothing. And now there is more awareness of counseling, but there's not awareness of the replacement child condition so much with therapists. So, you know, there is added more help in some ways, and yet there's a big gap still.
That's true. That's so true. And I think we are making some progress. I think there is training in several countries offered on this. And each one of you who sees a therapist, each one of you who trains, each one of you who knows others and who writes to the forum and shares, etc., makes actually an active contribution towards this not being overlooked, to this being seen and spoken about. Are there other issues some of you haven't spoken yet who are with us? Would you like to add something to our findings?
Yeah, maybe I also brought it up in our group, the relationship to the sibling. Ruth mentioned the idea of the twin, but I think it's also a really difficult relationship, because it's just in a relationship, and to separate from the sibling was one of the issues we talked about, or it has been important for me, how to kind of separate myself from that other identity.
These stories are so important. One of the things that we're adding in our book when we're doing the second edition is, and I'll just read this, it's very short. One day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And I think that's so perfect.
Yes. Each sharing is so, so important. Each one of us to be seen, to be heard. Would you like to?
Yes, I come back to a question from you before. How can we heal our parents? My parents already died. And my question is, can we heal our parents? Is it our issue, or and we can go our way parallel? Can we go both ways, heal our parents with our behavior and find my way, find our own way too? Is it possible? Is that our issue, to heal our parents?
I think we felt that it was our issue to heal our parents. I know I did. I don't think, I mean, speaking for myself, and I don't think it's our responsibility to heal our parents, but I felt like it was, I felt that. Now that they're gone, my parents have been gone for years. Now that they're gone, I think it's only that I can look at them as real people and give them 3 dimensions and understand that they were human and they did they did the best they could. That's my feeling.
Right. Yeah, I have the same feeling with my mother. And I think the big thing is being able to understand from this viewpoint and be able to kind of forgive anything that you feel was kind of coming down on you in a way that wasn't coming down on somebody else who wasn't experiencing what we went through. You can understand somebody else's pain when you're away from it a little bit.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Irma, Egle, Hedi, there are so many other therapists here in the room. What do you think? Can we heal our parents and go our own way? Fascinating. Who would like to contribute from your clinical point of view, from your experience?
I think it's a great goal, but I think it's a high order, right? I think it's a big burden for young kids to feel, and I think many of us in this role and again, this isn't about blaming anyone, it's just kind of how things transpire, right, in these families where there's grief. But growing up, we feel this, we feel our parents' grief, and of course we want to heal it and help them, and that's a heavy weight for a child when, we end up parenting the parent, and we're not really supposed to be doing that, right? We're supposed to be getting the parenting as children. But hopefully as we do our own work and, like Judy was saying, we have kind of more understanding of our parents. And I think probably most or all of us have a lot of understanding and empathy for our parents and what they went through, and also empathy for ourselves, right? So that we can just work all of this through. But it's a tall order. I think that's a lifetime of work, right? Part of what we do.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's also, once you do figure out that maybe some of this damage was done to you, I mean, I spent a whole year being really angry and, trying to get over that. So I think maybe that's part of the process. I don't know, your therapist people can tell me if that's true.
Also maybe it takes your parent being gone to be able to understand and forgive, because when they're there, you have the same actions and words happening to you. When they're gone, you're not facing it on a day-to-day basis. And then you can explore, then you have a little more room for yourself.
Although, Rita, one thing I'd add to that I think is interesting, and again, like so many similarities for all of us, but so many differences too, is that there's nothing static about this experience, right? That sometimes our parents enact a lot of stuff with us at certain points, and that they also are capable of growing and of shifting, and that we grow and shift, and that the relationship is always changing, right? So I think you know, things that happened in our childhood might be really different, like especially maybe before we reach the age of our sibling who died, that's a certain, then after we surpass that, and then after we have certain awarenesses, and also as our parents grow and heal and do things, that things can or don't, right? And some of them don't. So just how things may or may not evolve and shift over time with those relationships and what happens. It's really interesting.
Right. But the problem is a lot of us didn't even realize what was going on until we were much older and our parents maybe weren't around anymore. You know.
Would some of the other therapists here today still want to say something to that?
Could I? Yeah, I could share a little bit. Not a therapist, but a little bit from my own experience with my mom, because I was trying to heal her for my whole life. I was trying to make her happy, which was what I thought would heal her. And then I was her major person in her last 9 years, and so we had a lot of contact. And something really powerful happened for me through that, because I had so much more contact with her after I did a fair chunk of my own healing. I finally came to realize I had this idea of what happy should be for her. It was my idea of what was happy for me, and I wanted her to have that. That felt like that would feel like I'd fulfilled my mission somehow with her, that she would become happy in my idea of happy. And it was when I finally realized that wasn't her idea of happy, was different. Her idea of, she kind of liked to be, she liked being miserable. It was kind of a weird thing. She was happy being ornery. That was her happy place in a strange way. And when I finally realized that, I was able to let go of a little. Then it was still hard, and the grief since she's passed has been really complicated, but I was able to let go of this expectation of her being what I thought she was supposed to be. And and so those 9 years with her, which were really hard, but were really healing. It was a weird mission I had in my life, but it helped so much. I can't imagine what the grief would be like now if we hadn't had that time. It would be, much more like what I imagine my brother is going through, who didn't get to have any of that with her. So yeah, that for me, that was really powerful.
Thank you, Robin. That's so useful, so helpful for all of us. Just you can feel it inside. Thank you.
So,
would anyone like to say something? No? Yes, Johanna?
I think there's a difference. When I was a child, I have to do this behavior because it was necessary to survive. And now I'm an adult and I'm aware of this theme of replacement trend. Now I can forgive them, the parents or the mother. And I think that's a big difference. Now I have the choice to do it. But this choice was, I didn't have when I was a child. It was necessary to survive, only to survive.
That's so true. Thank you.
Maybe I can say something. As a therapist working with the clients who have replacement child issues, so it seems that again they worked so hard for the parents and others. So first of all, as I see them, it is a challenge to find how to work for oneself, to find oneself, and this is the biggest issue as I feel. So Yeah, I agree with the thoughts about that. Maybe when there is no choice, then working for a parent, but when there is a choice, so then the person oneself is the most important. And it's a challenge to find the way to see it like that, usually.
That's true. Thank you. Takes courage and long time, sometimes long time.
Yeah, right.
Process, sharing, looking inside.
I was just thinking about how it depends. I know sometimes we feel like if we find out that we're a replacement child before our parents die, or if we find out after they die, it's that sort of, should we be healing? I think that the question is to, having felt like I spent my life trying to heal my parents, particularly my mother, that the only way to really heal is to heal ourselves. And that change with the change in us allows us to accept and to understand what went on. And in that way, it does change our parents and it does heal that relationship. And I think that's where we find the peace, is in healing that relationship that we have with them, whatever it looks like. And I think it's, I feel it's something that can be achieved even if they passed on.
Yeah,
I think that's something
I agree.
that's
I agree.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I know we're getting to the the end point of our session, and I wanted to also share, Lizette, I wanted you to introduce what you are going to be doing as an extension of our Replacement Child Forum, with a research project that you're going to offer to our participants here. So maybe you'd like to explain that.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Yeah, no, as part of my studying, I have to put together a research project, and I've chosen something that's close to my heart, which is obviously replacement child syndrome. And I want to be able to help counsellors to become more aware of and how to identify, because a lot of the issues that come up are very similar. So I put the question to Kristina, Judy and Rita, and I said, could I put that question out on today? And they suggested that maybe we have another webinar where anyone that has had therapy or is in therapy or has anything to put forward about how, if my main question was how effective is therapy in identifying replacement child syndrome, and about how it is the core condition, and how the therapist has guided them towards that healing. So I will put something to the forum and put it as a sort of a question that's directly to the point. So
that's great.
I want to be able to find out how we've discovered it and how the therapist has worked with it. So
and we'll put a with your help, Lizette, we'll put a blog post up for people to see what you're going to be doing, when, and how to sign up.
Right.
Yes.
I wanted to also, I think I overlooked that Egle wanted to say something. So before we close, Egle, could you join us?
Absolutely.
Okay. When you talk about this parenting your parents, it sounds like changing roles. It sounds like like being mother for my mother, for my grieving, to become mother for my grieving mother, to make her joyful and to look this, and it sounds like to make my parents happy, and then they will make me happy. And if it doesn't stop, it could spread further. For example, this often replacement child became caretaking professions, and they are caretaking for others, making others pleasant, and it spread more and more, and it's changing roles. It's come to me. Yes.
Thank you, Egle. It's a parentified child, and I'm smiling a little bit because there are at least 5 or 6 or 7 who've chosen this profession. And Lisette, I think this is great that you do this research project, and I wonder how many you may find, you know, there are many professionals who may not be aware of the condition, and we all make a great effort to change that, but you might find quite a few members amongst, you know, the professionals who are personally touched by that. So I think that will be an interesting, thank you, Egle, for raising that, an interesting aspect to your research work. And it means we can continue. So I think this will be rather soon, maybe in 2 weeks' time, we'll have another gathering.
Yeah. We'll talk about the date and the time and get it set.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you all. This has been really wonderful. And I'll look forward to our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
everyone.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Okay.